So for the past couple of weeks now, I've been testing out the gigabyte version of the GTX 980 Ti. This is an absolutely insane graphics card, especially if you want to do any kind of quad or ultra HD gaming. But these days there's a new kid on the block from AMD. We're talking about the R9 Fury X. Now both of these graphics cards are in the upper spectrum of gaming specific GPUs. They both retail for around $650, and in this video we're going to take a look at how they compare against each other, specifically in terms of their gaming performance. So if you're interested in that, let's get right into it. Now the first thing that we're going to take a look at is the raw specifications of both these two graphics cards. Now taking a look at the R9 Fury X, the GPU frequency is clocked at around 1050 megahertz. In terms of stream processor, it has over 4096, 64 compute units, 256 texture units, and it has a fill rate of about 268.8 gigatransfers per second. Now the big revolution of this new Fiji architecture is that the fact that they're using high bandwidth memory technology. Now this is a completely new redesign of the memory interface on these GPUs compared to the DDR5 technology we have on the GTX 980 Ti and most conventional graphics cards. So we have 4 gigs of that high bandwidth memory, and it's clocked at around 500 megahertz. Now we have an insane memory bus of 4096 bits. So that's a massive difference compared to what you find in most traditional graphics card, giving it a memory bandwidth of 512 gigabytes a second. Moving forward in terms of cooling, the Fury X is liquid cool. It has a 120 millimeter radiator with a really quiet fan that provides a lot of static pressure with pretty low acoustics. In terms of power, all of the Fury X's are going to need 2 8-pin connectors, so you're definitely going to need a beefy power supply to run this thing. Now in terms of the ports and connectivity, we have 3 DisplayPort 1.2 connections, which is going to allow you to do 4K resolutions at 60 Hz refresh rate. Sadly, we only have HDMI 1.4a protocol. We don't have HDMI 2.0 like we have on the most of the GTX 900 series of graphics cards from Nvidia. You are going to need some kind of adapter to go from DisplayPort to HDMI 2.0. Unfortunately, those kind of adapters aren't available, and because of the compact size of the Fury X, it would have made a great home theater gaming rig, but since you don't have HDMI 2.0 built into it, you are going to have some difficulties in that endeavor. Now move forward and take a look at the specs of our GTX 980 Ti from Gigabyte. From the boost clock standpoint, it's clocked at around 1291 megahertz, and its base clock is around 1190 megahertz, and this is on the overclock setting from the factory. Now in terms of shader units, we have 2816 CUDA cores with about 176 texture mapping units. In terms of memory, we have 6 gigs of a GDDR5 clocked at around 7010 megahertz, and it has a memory bus of 384 bits. Certainly pretty large for an Nvidia card, but nowhere compared to as huge as that 4096-bit bus we have on the Fury X. Now in terms of cooling, we have a triple 80mm fan configuration on our Gigabyte version of the 980 Ti. Pretty standard from most of the Gigabyte lineup of coolers. It's pretty quiet overall, but we're going to see how quiet it is compared to the liquid cooling solution we have on our Fury X. In terms of power, it requires 2 8-pin connectors, the same as the Fury X, and a lot better connectivity options over here on the back of our GTX 980 Ti. We have 2 dual-link DVI connections, 3 DisplayPort 1.2 connections, and 1 full-size HDMI 2.0 connection, so you can do your 60 Hz refresh rate at 4K resolutions with this card. Now moving right along, let's talk about the cooling performance on both these two graphics cards. And in order to do that, we're going to load up both GPUs. Just playing Far Cry 4 for about half an hour. And at idle, when you're not gaming, when you're not doing anything with your computer, you're going to find that the Fury X is going to run cooler, logically speaking, at 28 degrees C versus 35 degrees C on the GTX 980 Ti. And after 30 minutes of Far Cry 4, our Fury X topped around 66 degrees versus our 980 Ti topped around 85 degrees C. So that's really no surprise there. When you have a liquid cooled graphics card, it's always going to run cooler at load compared to an air cooled graphics card. And another big advantage is going to be the noise. Now at idle, there's not much of a difference between these two in terms of acoustics. Basically, the fan noise is about 39 decibels on the Fury X and about 37 decibels on the GTX 980 Ti, which is pretty much the idling noise of the whole computer computer itself, because the GTX 980 Ti, when not in use, can actually turn off the fan, so it's virtually silent during idle. Now, after 30 minutes of playing Far Cry 4 at 4K resolutions, the Fury X topped at around 44 decibels versus about 48 decibels on the GTX 980 Ti, so pretty big difference between the two, and certainly the fan doesn't really need to ramp up all that much on our Fury X, because it's pretty much on a consistent basis where it just needs to cool and dissipate the heat on the radiator itself. So you're always going to find, again, that liquid cooled graphics card will be quieter and cooler than the air cooled one. Now, to test out the efficiency of both these two graphics cards in terms of the power consumption, we're just going to simply measure the entire system power consumption coming straight out of the wall. So in order to do that, take a look at the specifications over here. We're using an Intel 5820K processor that's been slightly overclocked to about 5 gigahertz, and we're using MSI's X99S motherboard platform with 64 gigs of DDR4 memory. If you want a detailed breakdown of the entire gaming system, check out the description for more information. Now, at idle, our entire system with the Fury X measures around 121 watts versus our GTX 980 Ti draws about 114 watts with the entire system. Now, at full gaming load using Far Cry 4, the system uses about 408 watts with the Fury X and about 377 watts with the GTX 980 Ti. So there is a little bit of difference in terms of the power consumption, but not by a huge margin, especially when you're gaming 90% of the time. Now, with finally all that stuff out of the way, let's get into the main part of this comparison. That's the gaming performance of both these two cards. We're going to start with the synthetic benchmark using Unigen's Valley benchmark, and basically you can see the results over here. At 1920 by 1080, our GTX 980 Ti is the slight winner, getting a higher overall average FPS score of about 109.8 versus 102.7 on the Fury X. And the same thing goes when you set the resolution to 2560 by 1440 of the 980 Ti, getting 61.3 average frames per second versus 50.4 frames per second on the Fury X. Now, moving forward, let's actually take a look at the real world gaming performance of both these two graphics cards. We're going to take a look at the average frames per second scores on a whole bunch of different gaming titles at 3 different resolutions. So without any further ado, let's see which card comes out on top. Now, looking at the results, you can see that in most of your gaming titles that you're going to come across, the GTX 980 Ti is going to outperform the Fury X at this point. Now, keep in mind that the Fury X architecture is very new, and driver support isn't really up there compared to what we have with the Nvidia cards currently right now, and that's always going to play a huge factor into an early comparison. But generally speaking, looks like the GTX 980 Ti is the faster graphics card, with the one exception of Far Cry 4, where the Fury X is a little bit faster than the GTX 980 Ti. Now, keep in mind that DirectX 12 is slowly up on the horizon, and hopefully this new memory architecture that the Fury X entails will take advantage of that new platform, and developers will also make games that are more optimized for these new AMD cards. And of course, driver support is going to increase your performance as we go throughout the months. But generally speaking, right now, basically, if you do want the faster graphics card, on average, the GTX 980 Ti is faster, but there's certainly a lot of promise for the Fury X, and it's a fantastic graphics card, especially if you want to make a compact, quiet, and cool gaming rig. But definitely let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Give us a thumbs up if this video helped you out in any way, and also check out the description if you want more detailed information about each of the graphics cards. But really, other than that, that's really it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you later. Take care.